How do you do? Jen and Cam feel it would be unkind to present this program without a friendly word of warning. We are about to unfold our true crime podcast, a podcast of lifelong friends who seek to examine crimes which were committed without reckoning upon God. The discussion will be frank, and the subject matter will be of a grim and violent nature. I think it will thrill you. It might even horrify you. So, if there are young children listening, or if you feel unwilling to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, Cam, how are ya?
I am just, delightful. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Fantastic.
Fantastic. Well, I got a little case for us here today.
Cool. Let's hear it.
It's a something. Let me tell you.
Okay.
You ready to go?
Yep.
Here we go. So it's a nice day. There's a man fishing on the side of the river. All of a sudden, a woman comes out of the water and she's screaming for help. The woman just appeared virtually out of nowhere. The man who was fishing comes to her and he says, what's going on? And she was, going so fast and upset. She's frantic and she's barely able to get the story out. She tells the man that she and her two sons were on a canoe. They're out on a boat enjoying a nice little ride on the river. And the boat capsized and her oldest son is missing. The woman explains that her 19-year-old son, Michael, is paralyzed and unable to move his two legs and only has movement of one arm. First responders arrive on the scene and attempt to try to locate Michael. It takes them just over an hour to find Michael. Now, even if Michael was wearing a life jacket, the braces on each of his legs made his body sink immediately when he hit the water. Michael's mother was inconsolable, but she was used to courting tragedy in her life. As police began to question Judy about the accident, things become questionable from the start. Judy changes her story. In fact, she tells them 4 different stories in all. She tells officers that they were enjoying the day in the canoe when they must have hit a tree stump. And then she tells another officer that a snake hopped into the canoe and they panicked and it flipped over. Now, it's clear to investigators things are not what they seem. What authorities do not yet know is that many things have happened over the years to Judy, and they were never what they seem.
Judy's a little problematic. Is that what we're saying?
Judy's something. Here we go. 37-year-old Judy Buenoano was born either Judias or Judius. It's depending on where you get that information from. But she was born Judius Welty on April 4th, 1943, to a farming family in North Texas. The family had little to no money and struggled with what they did have. Judy's mom would pass away from tuberculosis when Judy was either around 2 or 4, again, depending on which article you cite. Judy and her little brother were then sent to be raised by her grandparents. When her father remarried, he sent for the children, who would then move in with him and his new wife in New Mexico. Judy would claim that she was abused by her father and stepmother pretty violently. At age 14, Judy attacked her stepbrothers with scalding grease, throwing it on them, and then proceeded to beat up her father and stepmom. She would be sentenced to 2 months for this in adult jail, by the way, which I thought was strange, but different time, I guess. When she was released, she chose to go to reform school rather than to return home. So I would guess it probably was not a very good place to be when you would choose reform school over returning to home.
No, I wouldn't think you're correct there.
At just 17 years old, she had her son, Michael. Now, he was an oops baby, but that was okay. She was adamant that she was going to do whatever she could to do better for him and be better for him, but not only for herself, but of course for the baby. She worked 2 jobs very often and tried hard to make it work and be the best mom she could be. In December 1961, things would begin to look up for young Judy. A man by the name of James Goodyear walked into her life. 27-year-old James is a military man, and he was immediately taken in by Judy. Judy, as the true Southern lady, always made sure to have her hair done and her makeup freshly applied, and that includes like super duper long eyelashes. You gotta love 1961. It wouldn't take long.
No, those long eyelashes are coming back.
Oh, big time. These are the 1961 version, to where it almost looks like little caterpillars, and you know, well, some of those are around today too, but you know what I'm saying. It didn't take long until James popped the question, and they became a family of 3 in 1962. James would adopt young Michael, and the family would move to Nebraska. But since James was in the military, they wouldn't stay long, and they would end up finally in Orlando, Florida. Your favorite.
Mm-hmm.
The family of 3 would soon be adding to the mix, and they welcomed babies, James, and then 2 years later, Kimberly. When the growing family needs a bit more money, Judy opens a daycare. That's good. This allows her to stay home with her children, but then also bring in some money. Mm-hmm. You would think that they had finally found happiness. But as we know, Jen, this is a true crime podcast, so that doesn't happen a whole lot now, does it?
Happiness is fleeting.
The couple begins fighting, and they fight a lot. Judy was screaming and yelling. She was not happy. James was getting tired of the hassle, so when Vietnam came calling, he was deployed, and he was happy to do so. Now, good old Judy. Judy thought she may like the break and finally be happy, but, that was not meant to be. The stress of raising 3 children on her own while James was away was really taking a toll on her. Loneliness set in. But Judy had a remedy for that, Jen. And that remedy came in the form of a used car salesman. This fella would keep her nights from not being quite so lonely, if you know what I'm saying. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge.
We got to do what we got to do.
I don't think so. When June 1971 hit, James returned home from Vietnam. Judy decided she needed to try to give the marriage another shot, and she ended her affair and started focusing more on the family. At first, the young couple seemed to really be getting along. Perhaps the separation had done them some good, or perhaps this was all fake. I'm going to go with that second option.
Think.
In August 1971, James came down with a strange illness. He was in severe pain, and there seemed to be no reasonable explanation for it. Now, this was after Vietnam, which, as we all know, lots of things went on over there. Agent Orange, not to mention other things. As James squirmed in pain with hallucinations and fever, Judy assured him and their family that she would take care of him. And Judy did take care of him the best she could until September 15th, when 37-year-old James passed away from his mystery illness. The death certificate would cite renal failure as the cause. Now, this is what the paper said, but that is not what Judy would tell others. She claimed that while James was in Vietnam, he got addicted to drugs. And to counteract this addiction, the military doctors gave him another drug, which it turns out he was allergic to, and this was the actual cause of his death. Okay.
That's a story. Uh-huh.
Now, that may have been okay until Judy had a rather shocking conversation with her friend. The friend had mentioned to Judy that she was not happy in her marriage, and without skipping a beat, Judy had just the cure for that. Arsenic. You simply sprinkle it in the food and bam, takes care of the issue. In shock, the friend laughs and says, basically, you're kidding, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm kidding. So she says, I'm kidding. She was not kidding. So you see where we're going with this.
Right. Well, to be fair, arsenic was used as healing properties a long time ago until people kind of discovered that it didn't really work. So
and it killed you. Could kill you.
Yeah.
If this is not a bit strange, I guess when Judy invited her, and you can't make this up, her ex-lover, the used car salesman, to James's funeral as if it were a Thanksgiving Day holiday party, I think the red flags would be flying. But fear not, Judy now claimed that this fella was her business associate. And, she would end up departing the funeral with him later, arm in arm.
For bedroom business, I'm assuming, correct?
Mm-hmm. However, good old Judy. Judy went up to, say her final goodbyes to James, and Right there in the middle of the floor, she fell down and faked a seizure. I mean, had a seizure, from grief, the grief of it all. But immediately got up and then left arm in arm with her used car salesman boyfriend / business associate.
Drama 101.
The grief didn't last long because you know what helps make it better? That's right, Jen. Insurance money.
Insurance money.
That's right. Judy would gain $90,000, which is almost $650,000 in today's money. Now, Judy was not only being awarded for the death of her husband, but she's also the woeful widow of a military man. And she loved the attention. And, well, you kind of see where the story's taking us right now.
Mm-hmm.
With all that money, Judy is living the high life. She's buying cars, taking vacations, and she's looking for the next Mr. Right, or in her case, Mr. Right Now. And this happens to be a man by the name of Bobby Joe Morris.
Mr. Breathing Right Now. Yeah.
Anything?
Until she gets a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
At the start of the relationship, she was always sure to show her best attributes. Kindness, loving, affection. Oh, and how she loved to cook for her new boyfriends.
Which, strangely, all the food had a sweet almond-smelling fragrance.
Little bitter taste. Burnt almonds. She was always sure to be the ideal partner to Bobby, and it worked. In just under 6 months, which, as you'll see as we go on, that 6-month mark seems to be the sweet spot for Judy, Bobby asked Judy and her 3 kids to move in with him. Now, Judy and the kids moved to Pensacola to be with Bobby Joe. Judy made a splash with her larger-than-life persona, always the center of attention. Once again, Judy would make some questionable comments regarding an unhappy marriage and how to solve that situation. As Judy befriends a neighbor lady, the two began to hang out. One day, when the women were out shopping, she confesses to Judy that her marriage was not working. Again, Judy had just the cure, Jen. You take out some life insurance policy on the man, and then you use arsenic to spice up his meals. Bam, problem solved.
Perfect.
Husband's gone, and wife is rich. Judy then tells her that, this is what she did with James, and look at my life. Look how much better it's gotten. Since that conversation, the friend decided to distance herself, and wisely so, might I add. As the relationship was evolving, Bobby Joe started to see signs that made him start to rethink this all. He informs Judy that he wants out, and in fact, she can stay in Pensacola. He's moving to Colorado. Now, maybe Bobby knew Judy had killed James, or maybe he suspected it even, and he was freaked out, so he hightailed it out of there. Or perhaps he really was just done with the relationship. Whatever the case, Judy was not done. Nope. And one day she said, guess what, kids? Pack up. We're moving. We're moving to Colorado to go be with Bobby. Didn't matter that Bobby didn't want that, by the way. Poor Bobby makes that mistake. Bobby lets her in, and that would be the last mistake he would make. In January, just 3 months after Judy moved in with Bobby, Bobby is fighting for his life in the ICU. Now, maybe I am thinking something's fishy here, but this also happens to be the exact same hospital where Judy is working. Part of Judy's job is to take care of her patients, including Bobby. I know.
What could happen?
Mm-hmm.
What could happen?
As he's in the hospital, his condition begins to deteriorate rapidly. On January 28th, 1978, Bobby Joe Morris passes away. He was only 37 years old, just like James, by the way. Bobby Joe's mother wanted an autopsy performed on her once vibrant and healthy son. Bobby Joe's passing and his affairs would not run as smoothly as James's did. Judy immediately steps in and she wants to take over, but Bobby's mom? She's not having it. Judy, of course, now, we didn't see this coming, did we? Wants to have him cremated, and cremated like yesterday. While his mother is adamant, absolutely not. I want him brought back home to be buried near me. Judy would say, we're married. Well, I mean, we're not married by law, but common law, I'm his wife. No, she was not. But she was, dictating this so that she could have her way. Bobby's body, thank goodness his mom wins, Bobby's body is returned home where his mother buries him near the place he grew up. Judy, meanwhile, was already up to her tricks. You see, Judy had taken out a life insurance policy on Bobby without Bobby even knowing this. And she did it under the name of Mrs. Judy Morris.
Huh.
They were never married. By the way, I mentioned that, right? That they were never married.
They were never married.
Nope, never married.
Well,
She had simply forged his name on all the documents. Once again, Judy received $90,000 and moves back to Pensacola, where she bought herself a big new fancy home for the family, big fancy car for herself. Oh, and the best part, she got herself a new name, Jen, and with that name, she got a medical degree in front. Dr. Judy, seemed to be living her perfect life. Perfect life, except for one little part. Michael, her son. You know, the one at the top of the podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Michael had an intellectual disability. He grew up attending schools that would help him learn the best way he could. He struggled to get by, and this did not fit into Judy's perfect life plan that she had so carefully carved out for herself. When Michael reached 16 years old, he quit school and he joined the military. It was the fall of 1979 when Michael was given leave from the military, and he decided to swing by home, spend a few days with Mom and, his siblings. Just like James and Bobby Joe, Michael comes down with a strange illness. He's admitted to the hospital, but this time, doctors find something odd. Michael had 7 times the acceptable level of arsenic in his system. Well, Judy,
how would he get that, Cam?
Well, I tell Judy finds something that she thinks works, and she just sticks to it, doesn't she now?
Yeah, she's not going to change.
Of course, Judy's right there with a tidy little explanation. Judy informs doctors that Michael has pica syndrome. Now, pica syndrome is the condition where you eat or you mouth items that should not be eaten. While Michael was in the military, she continues, he was training in metal compounds, and this must be the reason for the problem. He has ingested these metals, like arsenic, because he'd put them in his mouth. With Judy not working at the hospital, she's not working at this one, mind you, like she was the other one, Michael survives, but he is not unscathed. The poison has permanently damaged both his legs and one arm. Michael will never be able to walk unassisted again.
To her own child.
I was just going to say that. Obviously, due to this, Michael will not be able to return to the military and instead will now be dependent on his mother for lifelong care. Well, I think we both know by this point, Judy's not going to be having that. She's not going to be happy with that situation. So this brings us up to the day when Judy and Michael and little brother James went out on that afternoon canoe ride. Now, there's questions and not a lot of answers. Namely, who would take a person on a canoe ride with heavy metal leg braces on their legs, knowing that if the canoe flipped, the person would sink to the bottom almost immediately? That was
the mother wouldn't do it.
Stream of thought there, Canoes, as we know, tip so easily. Surely a mother would never compromise her child's safety in such a compromising situation. Surely no mother, except for Dr. Judy. With no witnesses or evidence, police are unable to charge Judy with a crime. Now, I was thinking about this. If I had a child and wanted to why wouldn't you put them in the canoe, take their leg braces off, leave them on the side of the bank or whatever, and then, put them in the life jacket? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, always a life jacket.
But take off the leg braces. The leg braces, I think, were 15 pounds a piece, I believe. That's 30 pounds.
Depending on the rivers here in Missouri are so filled with debris and falling trees, you can easily fall out. Even if you're completely able, all your limbs are working perfectly, you can fall out and your legs can get
stuck.
You could get caught in those debris. So, yeah.
How about try to find a different activity, one that's on land, a little bit safer?
Well, if your child wanted to go on a canoe trip, you would do what you could for your child to get to go on a canoe trip.
Yeah,
but
namely take the leg braces
take
off.
Safety. You would take leg braces off. I'd put him in a damn balloon, attach a balloon to him so he couldn't float. So he would float.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the life jacket was.
Whatever. Exactly. But you know what I mean. I would do whatever I could to keep him safe.
Most parents would. But then again,
he'd look like the damn house from Up if I had it my way,
So sadly, with no witnesses or evidence, police are unable to charge Judy with the crime, even though she was acting strange. Judy is now free to go and collect $110,000 from the accidental death of her son, Michael. Once again, Dr. Judy takes a nice cruise vacation, buys herself another fancy car, and in fact, she's going to open up a business, Jen. She's going to open up a business called Fingers and Faces, and that's with the letter N apostrophe. Fingers and faces. Now, this is a nail salon, a fancy beauty salon. But it's funny, though, because I guess that medical degree, that I guess she just decided she didn't want to be a doctor anymore. So she's going to open up, fingers and faces.
Well, that's what you would do.
Right? I mean, all of this was courtesy of the death of her son. Gives a whole new meaning to cold-blooded mother now, doesn't it, Jen? Dun, dun, dun. Get it? Cold-blooded mother, like cold-blooded mother effer. Get it? Do you get it?
Gotcha. No, I got it.
Okay, thanks. In February 1981, Judy decides to once again go on the lookout for a man. She meets a 34-year-old named John Wesley Gentry, who is just her type. Rich and male. That's about it all it took for her. Just like her typical way, 6 months pass and the two of them are living together. I don't know what that 6-month thing is, but that seems to reoccur throughout her story. The pair are living the good life, whining and dining, vacations to anywhere and everywhere. By their friends' accounts, the duo seemed very happy. John gets down on one knee, Jen, and Dr. Judy says yes. Poor John. Run, buddy. Run. Run.
Fast.
What? I mean, honestly, if you were John, wouldn't you inquire about Dr. Judy's past loves and what happened to them?
Well, she could easily explain that away.
Right?
Right?
Okay, one
but
dies.
That still would be a huge red flag. I mean, no matter what.
2 people die. Sure, it's possible. But 4 loved ones run, courtesy of you.
Did she tell them that they died?
But wouldn't you ask? You know how nosy we are. We'd ask, and then we'd go investigate.
Oh, we would. But I'm not sure.
Other people would?
Other would.
I don't know. Poor John did not run. And when Judy surprises John with the news that Dr. Judy, who is age 40 at this point, is pregnant, that's right, John is thrilled. He's going to be a dad, Jen.
Good. That makes me happy.
Don't let it make you happy. It is about here that things are going to get weird. I mean, weirder. John. Come on, John. John and Judy are supposed to go to a farewell party. Somebody at the beauty salon is leaving and they're throwing a party. Dr. Judy tells John that the two need to take separate cars to this event. Oh, and John, you need to park in a very specific spot, separated a little bit from everybody else, kind of like on the side of the building. Now, if your spouse told you that, wouldn't you be like, why? John was like, okay, all right. So he did. John arrived at the restaurant. He parked exactly where Judy had told him to park. The two enjoyed the party, and when it was time for them to depart, Judy tells John, hey, you know what? You go ahead. I'm going to be right behind you. I just want to go back inside, clean up, make sure everybody's good to go, and then I'm going to come home. I'll be right behind you. John gets in his car, turns the ignition on, and bam, car blows up while Judy is standing there watching. Police arrive to the scene, and they are shocked to see that John survived. But Dr. Judy was also very shocked that he survived because that was not supposed to happen.
I'm sure her mouth hit the floor. I'm sure it hit the floor.
And the car, I saw a picture of the car. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't looked it up, but I can't imagine many people survive a car bombing.
Yeah. John is rushed to the hospital, and while he's alive, he has sustained many, many injuries from the explosion. His face and body are ravaged with shrapnel. Many of his organs have been damaged, including he actually ended up losing a kidney. I believe he had to have his spleen removed as well. So very lucky. ATF arrived to investigate the scene, and they determined that his car had dynamite attached, rigged up to the lights so that when he turned the lights on, the car would explode. What?
Yeah.
Little John. Little normal John.
She's something.
She is something, I told you. Detectives arrived to question Judy, who by this time is at the hospital bedside of John. She's just so upset. She's upset it didn't work, and this was not her plan. Detective Ted Chamberlain arrives, and he quickly gets a vibe that something is off about Dr. Judy. Dr. Fake Judy. Fake Dr. Judy. Let's go with that. Fake Dr. Judy. When the detective finally get to question John about all of this, I believe it took him 3 to 4 days to wake up, and then he was able to answer questions from them. So they asked John, who do you think could have done this? And John, I have no idea. I mean, he was pretty well loved by his friends and family. When he's asked about money, was there money involved? Did you owe any people money? Things like that. John tells them that he and Judy had a life insurance policy out on each other, but fake Dr. Judy had decided to cancel them. So they didn't have that. There was no money.
I'm sure she did. She probably remembered to cancel that, I'm sure.
Ooh, yeah. And at this point, John told police that Judy had been giving him these quote unquote special vitamins that made him sick. He had been hospitalized previously, ended up, I believe he had to stay in the hospital for 12 days. But it was amazing when he was in the hospital, Jen.
He got better?
The symptoms went away. Yep. Oh, and he was dismissed. But you know what?
Hospital.
That was not weird enough for him to, put two and two together about Dr. Fake Judy.
But he loved her.
He did love her. So he stayed with her.
He's not going to overlook it. He's not going to think that Judy's harming me. That poor man.
So Detective Chamberlain is like, John, we got to tell you something, buddy. That life insurance policy is still very much in place. And actually, your beneficiary is none other than Dr. Fake Judy. Fake Dr. Judy. She's going to collect that money. However, Jen, this policy was not that measly $100,000 like it had been before. Dr. Judy, I guess she was going to receive $500,000, which calculates to $1.5 million in today's market. Fake Dr. Judy gave herself quite a raise from that little measly $90,000 back in the day, right?
Well, I'm sure that didn't go very far.
Oh, and the police officers are like, yeah, there's another thing, John. Just another little thing. Judy's not pregnant. Not even a little bit.
Oh, that poor man. Can you imagine?
No, you're still laying in bed trying to figure out how your life, like you were in an exploding car. And now pretty much.
And now you found out the love of your life. The woman that you love not only tried to kill you, she's lied about her pregnancy. She's only wants you for your insurance policy. Horrible.
So at this point, John finally, I guess he succumbs to the fact that, yeah, fake Dr. Judy's, maybe she's not even a doctor. Who knows at this point, right? So John agrees.
She might not even be Judy for that.
So John agrees to give police those special vitamin capsules for a closer look. And gee, shocker, wonder what they find there. Police then go search John and Judy's home and they locate, criminals, they find some wire, and it just so happens to be the exact same wire that was located on the dynamite, connecting it to the car to explode it. Oh, and they also find a receipt which had the purchase of explosives on it, the little dynamite. Seems that Judy had asked a friend to purchase the dynamite, and the friend's, sure, I'll do that for you.
No questions asked.
Nope. Hey, Jen, can you go get me some dynamite, right?
Why, I sure can, my favorite rat-free friend.
Rat-free friend.
Rat-free friend.
Lost 3 people in your life. A little bit mysteriously. Okay. Authorities also retrieved some books on her kitchen counter on poisons and what they do, how to work them, what they work best for, the ones that can't be trailed. What do you call it? Identified?
Traced.
Yeah. There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
It's a hard word, so I understand.
Thank you. Now, it's also interesting to note here, this is the gall, the nerve, the audacity of some people. Interesting to note here that as police are, digging around, they find out that fake Dr. Judy, she had told her friends that John was dying of a terminal illness. Now, mind you, this is a year prior to the non-terminal explosion that Dr. Fake Judy was hoping for. And here's a little telling bit of Judy had out her calculator, her calendar, and she figured out stuff. She had just recently booked a cruise for her and the kids. Without John. Without John.
Oh, nice.
Guess she was counting on his money to pay for it and him not to be there. Could you imagine the police telling you this? Seriously.
No, while you're still recovering from being blowed up? No.
Blowed up. You done did blowed up.
Sorry, your mom blew up, Ricky.
Right. Police have just enough to arrest her, and they go to her home to do so. But in typical fake Dr. Judy fashion, it would not be so simple. As they're taking her to the police car, she falls on the ground and has one of those seizures, that one she had at her first husband's funeral. Mm-hmm. Yeah, police were not having it. And they're like, okay, knock it off.
First time.
Get in the car. Yeah. You're done. Dr. Judy gets up. Fake Dr. Judy gets up, and she does just that. She gets in the car. As investigators learn more about Dr. Judy, they make a move to have the bodies of James Goodyear and Bobby Joe Morse exhumed. Since arsenic is a heavy metal, it preserves the body in a rather remarkable state. I did not know that.
It does.
So it comes as no surprise that both men had extremely deadly levels of arsenic in their systems.
Arsenic makes you a damn fine corpse.
On January 11th, 1984, she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in her son Michael's death. Judy would be tried separately for each murder and for the attempted murder. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for Michael's murder. She was found guilty of first-degree murder in the case of her first husband, James Goodyear. The jury deliberated 10.5 hours, and for this, she would be sentenced to death by electrocution on November 26th, 1985. Now, mind you, Colorado prosecutors decided not to charge her over the death of Bobby Joe. I think because she was already serving a death sentence in Florida, they're not going to get much better than that. So they chose not to prosecute her for the death of Bobby Joe Morse.
Save the taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
Yep, I get it.
It was estimated that she collected around $240,000 in insurance money from the deaths of her husband, son, and boyfriend in Colorado. And it is believed that the insurance policies were not ever signed by Michael, her son. She had one on him. She also got some military money from both her first husband and Michael because they did the military. Military was kind of on this. They're like, what? Because, I think they're probably...
Yeah, I don't think they mess around.
Yeah. Judy would continue to her dying day to deny any involvement in any of these bizarre deaths. On March 30th, 1998, at the age of 54, Dr. Fake Judy, who earned the nickname, by the way, the Black Widow, was executed in Florida. She was the first woman to be executed in over 150 years. Little side note, it's also believed that she was involved in a 1974 murder in Alabama and in the 1980 death of her boyfriend, Gerald Doucette. After her arrest, Doucette's body was exhumed and analyzed for signs of arsenic poison. Gee, do you want to know what they found?
There was?
No charges were ever filed against Judy for either of these.
So there was arsenic in the system.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. So that is the story of fake Dr. Judy. And if I didn't mention, James Goodyear was her first husband, and she took the name Goodyear, and Bueno, meaning good, and then Año, meaning year, Goodyear. So she just changed it.
Año, isn't it Año?
I took Spanish. You'd think I know that, but I don't. So that is the story of her and her terrible
She's pleasant.
ways.
What a horrible...
Her own child. And then I guess her daughter came forth and said, I don't believe it. She was a really good mom to me and my brother and us. And I'm thinking, well, yeah.
Well, until there was nobody left to kill off.
Yeah. I mean, she couldn't.
Until they were the next ones.
I mean, she died at 54. That's still relatively young.
So why did she die, though, Camille?
No, I'm saying that. So you take the years that she was in prison and all that. Like, she had some good years left that she could have got more mid and done this again and again and again. So thank goodness.
Okay,
she was stopped. Is my point. It took that many times, but
I was gonna say, wow, she died so young.
No, I meant because usually by the time the death penalty kicks in and all that, it's
right.
Much.
It takes forever for the death penalty to go. Yeah.
So she's just not a nice person, and that's just a little mom of the year for you for the upcoming American holiday, Mother's Day for you. There you go. She's and I know sometimes
she's something.
We probably me even more than you use bad humor at some of this, but sometimes I can't believe it. Just the man fishing on the riverbank. You took your son with 15 30 pounds of metal baggage on his legs and you put him in a canoe on a river? And there was she apparently had told police that he was wearing a life jacket. Then later on, he wasn't.
Couldn't keep the lies straight.
Yeah. Yep. So who's to say? But even if he was wearing a life jacket, 30 pounds is going to go whoop right down metal,
Like, yeah.
And you can't.
And she did
it on purpose.
Good call on the man on the river. She's unbelievable.
So anyway, I apologize for a little use of humor sometimes, but sometimes I just cannot get over people telling her friends that he's terminally ill when he's so not, and then he explodes and you think he's going to die, but you went ahead and bought a cruise for you and the kids. I mean, it's just so many things that
she would have to say, listen, my husband's terminally ill, but please don't talk to him about it. I know he looks healthy, but that's part of the illness. I mean, you would think after a while, your friends would question.
That's what I'm saying. And how much
Unless
bad
she
luck
kept them separate.
Well, yeah, and she moved a little bit to not, but then, she told the two women that were her friends-ish, and then I think they were like, wait, what? You poisoned your first husband? Okay, yeah, we're not going to be friends anymore. So,
well, unless they thought she was teasing or joking.
Well, I think they did, wouldn't you? But at the same time, that's not even a funny joke to joke about.
If somebody told me that they poisoned their first husband or whatever, I would immediately go home and check up who their first husband was.
Thank you.
I'm nosy, so just in case it's not a joke.
And then it's not him, and then your boyfriend, then your son, then your fourth boyfriend. Come on now. Sooner or later. Yeah. And I mean, how much bad luck do you have to have when you're terminally ill and your car explodes for no reason?
Thank you.
With dynamite, no less. That is
unreal.
That is the story of Dr. Fake Judy. And I love that she gave herself, because she was working as a nurse assistant in the hospital with the one boyfriend that died, or was that Jane? I can't even keep him straight. But she just full on promoted herself to have a medical degree. Why not? And then
if you can do it,
started wearing
the lab coat.
Yeah, lab coat. There you go, doctor's lab coat.
Well, that's all you need to be a doctor.
But then she just goes and then opens a nail salon. Really?
Well, that's once you are a nurse's assistant, and then you're a nurse, and then you get the jacket to become a doctor. The next step is to open up a nail salon.
Totally. Fingers and faces.
I mean, once you got the medical profession down,
just move it on to
a nail tech.
Totally. Start all over. I agree with you. Couldn't agree more, Jen.
Mm-hmm. That's my life plan, anyway. Still working on that nurse's assistant thing.
I don't even think you're a nurse's assistant yet. But if you go to her school, it goes pretty quick.
I'm not even sure I can spell nurse's assistant, to be quite honest.
Her schooling obviously doesn't take too long. So tell them that you want the expedited Dr. Fake Judy nursing medical program. That's what.
Oh no, we were in the nail chair with my daughter for over 2 hours, so I probably could have gotten half my nurse's assistant degree then.
Truth.
So,
good stuff. All right. Do we want to talk about anything quickly? And then
got a little kind of funny story.
Let's hear it.
I think it's funny. Last weekend was prom. So my one daughter was off to prom. My other daughter was off at the movie show with her friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it came time to go get the second daughter at the movie show. And as you know, I have as I have spoken before, I have the wreath on my front door that has the mourning dove that comes every year.
Mm-hmm.
And that lays her eggs. They have now hatched. They're so damn cute. Little dovelets or whatever they're called. Well, also this year, we are host to a nest of sparrows. So we have the doves on the top of the wreath and the tiny sparrows in the middle of the wreath.
So you have a bird condo.
Sanctuary.
I didn't know they build on top of each other. That's interesting. Yeah.
So the dove never leaves her nest. I can hear when she goes to when she comes back from getting food, because the little birds chirp, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
The sparrow will leave every time we open the door. So now you know what I'm going to say. As I opened the door to leave to go get my daughter, the sparrow flew into the house.
No, it did not.
It did. So my husband had been drinking bourbon to relax. And I'm running late to go get my daughter at the movie show. The dog's outside, and my cat, Chad, is going crazy because he sees the bird.
It's like Chad's
of course, I'm as cool as
biggest
can be, screaming,
dream ever.
Oh my God, the bird! And my husband's going, what? Because he's all chill and relaxed. So I'm trying to get the bird, and the bird flies, and he lands on my painting that's above the fireplace. So I'm trying to swoosh him out. So then he goes and he lands on the vampire kit that I have, or vampire killing kit. So I'm swishing him. Then he goes and he flies into the kitchen. And all the while, the dog's outside barking because he could tell something's going on. The cat's following me, trying to get
the bird.
My husband's sitting there not knowing what the hell's going on. The bird flies into the kitchen, lands on the watermelon that we have. I'm getting ready to cut up. And the cat, thank God, doesn't know that he can jump up onto the counters.
Oh.
And he's just sitting there. And then that's when my husband goes, "Open the garage door."
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Well, yeah, thanks. I'm still trying to get the cat out of the way, the bird out the window, because I opened up the window. The dog's barking. The other cat saunters in going, "What the fuck's going on?" She's just like my husband, who's drunk. So in the meantime, the bird keeps flying and hitting the wall and getting kind of stunned.
Oh.
And finally, he flies back into the kitchen, but as he does so, he knocks himself out on the little drop from the living room to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And falls. And I'm like rushing to get to the bird before Chad did. And then all of a sudden, here comes Chad with the little birdie in his mouth. So I'm screaming, "No, Chad!" And I'm chasing Chad, and Chad's going crazy. He's running, and I'm going, "Drop the bird, Chad, drop the bird." And my husband's going, "Just open the door." I'm like, "Chad's
That was 5 minutes ago, buddy.
I know. Chad's got the bird. And so I'm like, and he's like, "Then it's circle of life, Jennifer. It's a circle of life." And I'm like, "There's eggs in the nest. The mom can't die." And I start to tear up, and finally, Chad drops the bird. He's stunned, but he gets up and he flies and he goes behind the stove.
No, he does not.
I am like those mothers that children are under the car and they get that adrenaline. And I just, in one fell swoop, I yank the stove out from the wall. Finally, my husband gets up. He grabs a flashlight. He gets into the stove and we can't find the bird. We cannot find the bird at all. It's like gone. I'm looking in the stove. I'm opening up the drawers. I'm hitting the side of the stove. Can't find it. I'm like, it cannot die in my stove. I just got a new stove. I can't have a dead bird.
It'll be haunted. I'll have to get rid of it.
I'll need a new stove. It'll die and it'll rot because we can't find it.
Oh my God.
All of a sudden we hear Chad just start bouncing up against the wall again. And the bird had somehow got out from behind the stove without us knowing it.
And Chad had the bird again?
Chad was trying to get the bird. The bird was like on top of the chair and Chad was like jumping up to get it and the bird would fly up for a little while and it was just all around the house. The dog's barking. Chad's going crazy. My husband's going, "Open the door." And I'm just running around like crazy. So finally the bird's close enough to the front door. So I open the front door. It flies to the other side of the room. Then it flies where it lands behind the front door. You know, the door's open. It didn't go out the front door, but it went behind the front door. So I'm standing there with the door open, and my husband says those wisest words he can, "Open the door." I'm like, the door is fucking open. And so finally, I was able to scoop up the bird and get it out.
But it lived, right? And it's with its babies?
The bird, it's still with the nest, yes. But the damn thing flies. I'm scared to death it's going to go back in the house. I'm not kidding you. It was 15 minutes of my husband screaming at me to open the door while I'm screaming at Chad to drop the bird. And the dog barked. Thank God the dog was outside because if Reggie was inside when all this would happen. And then when it fell on, it was my painting. And, it was original artwork from the college, the old college that where we grew up. Mm-hmm. It's original artwork by the college art professor that did it. And I love it. It's like my favorite. And I was like, please don't shit on it. Please don't shit on it.
It didn't, right?
It didn't.
Okay, good.
But it was fun. And I was so mad at my husband because he was just watching the bird fly back and forth screaming, "Open the door."
What about your daughter?
Don't open the window.
Mom, why are you late?
No,
You wouldn't believe it if I told you, get in the car.
And then I sent it because I took pictures of the bird, in the house. And I sent it to my daughter because I thought she'd get a kick out of it, the one at prom. And she texted back and she goes, "Why are you sending me pictures of the house?" Random pictures of the house. And I had to zoom in and circle around the bird. And she's like, "Oh my God, mama bird." Yeah. So that was fun. That was my Friday night.
Well, it's pretty exciting.
Open the door.
You need to get him a shirt.
Ho door. Ho door. If you're a GOT fan.
Oh, boy. That's a good one.
It was fun.
That's a good one.
It was so
he's yelling at you. You're
so
yelling at
mad.
Chad. Chad's yelling at the bird. And Reggie's yelling at all of you.
Chad's just doing what a Chad does. You know, he was happy. And then, like, for the rest of the night, Chad kept looking at places the bird landed.
Yeah.
To see if the bird
Chad
was
was like,
there.
that was the best present you've ever gotten me. And
I
then you
know.
just went and took it away.
You do not know the panic that was in my heart when I saw that poor little thing in Chad's mouth. I mean, I kept thinking, those baby eggs, those eggs.
Right.
How am I going to sit on those eggs? That's what.
How am I going to explain it to the children?
Eggs? I got to get those eggs to act. Yeah, it was fun, but I was running back and forth. I was exhausted that 15 minutes. It was the longest 15 minutes
Plus,
of my life.
it's stressful.
I swear to
because
God.
you're like, please don't let the bird die. Please don't eat the bird. Shut up from the couch. Shut up. Reggie, stop barking. Yeah.
You know, my husband's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to try to get the bird out of the house is what I'm going to try to do without minimal casualties. That's what I
Circle of life. Circle of life, Jen. Circle of life.
Well, if I can stop that circle of life, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop that circle of life.
For right now.
It's got eggs. Yeah. I was petrified. But yeah, I mean, well, we do know that Chad can hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So he will be fine if he ever escapes.
Yeah.
But not on my watch.
Not on my watch, people. Well, that's a good story. I could never top that. Do we have any promos for this week?
We do. It is our friend Andrew from Unforbidden Truth.
Unforbidden Truth. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, take a listen. That will be exciting.
Yeah. We like Andrew. Andrew Dodge.
Thanks, Andrew. Andrew Dodge.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, Jen, until next time, remember, lock your doors.
And keep passing those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya.
Today's episode was researched and written by me, Cam. For more information about this episode, as well as all the sources I used, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by hosts Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from October Pod VHS. Our True Crime Podcast is executive produced by Nico Vertesi and Dick Vane. Make sure to like and subscribe to Our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter at Our True Crime Pod. You can email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. If you really like the show, make sure to check out our Patreon at Our True Crime Podcast. Our True Crime Podcast is an OTC production.
My name is Andrew Dodge. I've spent the last 11 years getting to know some of America's most infamous criminals, such as serial killers, spree killers, mass murderers, gangsters, mobsters, and many more criminals. Unforbidden Truth will bring you interviews with not only these individuals, but also mental health professionals, survivors of violent crime, and professionals in other fields related to crime. This is the only place you will hear the murderers tell their own stories from their own mouths, uncut, unraw, which is the unforbidden truth.